This goes for the people that they have well-meaning friends or family member. This is the sugar-free conundrum. Maybe somebody else is well-meaning and you go to someone's house for a Halloween gathering and the parents say, you know what? I know everybody else has a bunch of the gummy candy and I got you something special, and they give you the infamous Haribo sugar-free gummy bears. And the intent on the surface is fantastic. But my biggest request for you this is to please, for the love of God and for the love of yourself, out of self-love, please just say, thanks so much, accept it, smile, and don't eat it. Do not eat it. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. All right, what's going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast. And in this one, I feel like this is pretty timely. I feel like we've got to talk a little bit about everybody's favorite holiday that's kind of a holiday, but not really, but still is a holiday. And that would be Halloween. Because Halloween's one of those things where historically, Halloween for people with diabetes is that holiday of, cool, let me watch everybody else eat the candy or the treats, and I just get to stand here awkwardly. And I want to make sure that this year is a little different for you if you choose to partake in the festivities, because like we like to talk about here, right? Life is too short to not enjoy the food that you love, and it's too short to not enjoy the occasional sweet treat. So let's dive in. And I also want to share some of my own Halloween experience just to see how far diabetes has come, to show you how far it's come from 10, 15, 20 years ago relative to right now. Really focusing on 20 years ago, because that would be 2003. Wow, I was a youngin'. That's fun. So that being said, the first few years of having diabetes and having Halloween, of course, you're a kid. Think about what kids do on Halloween. You dress up when you go to school, you have your costume, you have trick-or-treating, whether it's with your friends, your family, it's at school, you're getting treats. The candy is everywhere. And I remember I had been diagnosed at a time, I was 7 years old, where the year before, when I was 6, it was a very vivid memory, right? It was Halloween. I want to say my friends and I all dressed up as ninjas because that was super cool back in the late 90s. Yeah, I'm old. But that being said, you've got a bunch of candy, everything's great. And I remember it was an amazing time. Lots and lots and lots of candy. A year later, I'm 7. I'm brand new diagnosed with diabetes. Maybe I just turned 8. Either way, I'm just 1 year older. Nothing should have changed. But of course, what changed was I now have diabetes. And I vividly remember going around our neighborhood. We were trick-or-treating. Everyone's got their bucket, their little, pumpkin-shaped bucket. And I had a massive, just gigantic quantity of candy when I was done. I was extremely excited. And of course, there's stuff that you like and there's stuff that's not as good. And everybody wants to have the Reese's or the Snickers bars, and the full-size candy bars are the biggest commodity. And then nobody wants the Smarties or the Sweet Tarts or any of that. Good low snacks. But either way, I remember having all of that and it was just taken. My fam just took it and said, hey, we're not getting candy this year. And I was thinking, that's a little weird. I just walked around a neighborhood and just worked for that candy. And I didn't get any of that year. And everything was so fresh. I was not even, it might have been about 2 months into diabetes. And I didn't get candy that year. Next year comes, similar type of situation. There's treats at school, did not get to participate in the treats at school. And then trick-or-treating, similar situation, except this time I got to have a couple of those little mini Reese's cups, which are still phenomenal. But again, I'm thinking I just did all that work for a couple Reese's cups. And don't get me wrong. This is not to say that my parents did anything wrong. This is not to say, oh my goodness, I was deprived as a child. What this goes to show is especially back then, I was on injections. My control wasn't as good. And just the conceptions around diabetes, the misconceptions, and the regular thoughts about it as a whole were so different than they are today. And things have come a really long way. And I genuinely don't think it was until probably 5th grade that I had a legitimate Halloween or middle school even, where legit Halloween, got the candy, got to enjoy the candy. And at that point, of course, I'm taking things a little bit more seriously. I'm bartering so I can only have Reese's because that's all I wanted ultimately. And that's a little bit of a different spin on things. So you look at just a few years before, I'm over here avoiding candy or being told to avoid candy. And a few years later, I'm trading for what I want and understanding, hey, I've got to carb count this, etc. And you might be thinking, why am I telling you all of this story? And yes, some of it is to show there's a stark contrast, especially when you're early on diagnosed, thinking you can't enjoy things as much as you ultimately want to, versus later on in diagnosis where it's like, oh, it's Halloween, big deal. I have a bunch of candy. I'll trade for what I want and I'll eat little amounts and figure out how to dose for it and finesse for it. So that's part one. Just understand if you're newer to diabetes, if you're within the first year, maybe within the first couple or 3 years, things will get better. Your understanding will get better. You will increase your aptitude. You'll increase your knowledge in carb counting and your dosing ability and feel more confident in participating in things like this. So that's the first thing I want to say. And again, this is all under the assumption that you're continuing to educate yourself and you're continuing to learn new things. If you just stick with whatever initial info you got, you're going to be stuck there for a while. But that goes for anything in life, right? The other thing about it is just kind of prefacing, different approaches people have with Halloween and different candies. And what I didn't mention was all of the sugar-free stuff, which I'll get to in just a second in more detail. But here's how I want you to, consider your Halloween plans for this year, whether you have kids and, you're trick-or-treating with them and you want to partake in some of their candy, whether you're the person listening and you are trick-or-treating for yourself, or you're just participating in a party or a gathering with buddies and pals, and there's lots of good, delicious looking food that sounds incredible, that's going to be sweet, that's going to be more than you are used to. Just some things for you to think about as you go into the holiday this year. And I know for you, maybe it's a weekend thing, maybe it's the weekend before, maybe it's the day of. Regardless, these are things you can use right now. And as we start eyeing the holiday season, which, let's be real, before you blink, you're about to be in looking at Thanksgiving, it's going to be stuff you can apply for that as well. So first things first, when it comes to good old Halloween, the first thing I can say is, whether there's tons of snacks at a gathering, whether you've trick-or-treated, the first thing I would say is, before you even go into something, commit to what you're going to do. So that might be, hey, I'm about to have an entire bucket full of candy. I am going to commit to 35 carbs worth, or I'm going to commit to 55 carbs worth, or whatever that thing is. I'm going to have a cookie, whatever it is. Give yourself a game plan going in. And the reason I say this is because it's really easy to tell yourself, hey, I'm going to show up and see what happens. And you show up and there's so many delicious looking options that you suddenly are thinking, well, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have a little bit of that, I'm going to have this other thing. If you go in with an intent, because more than likely these are going to be sweet treats we're talking about. We're not talking about, an entire meal in addition. If you go in with an intent, you're likely to have less variability with your blood sugars, because you're not going to suddenly be eating 40 carbs here and 20 carbs there and 60 carbs there. And you look up and you've eaten 170 grams and you're thinking, what am I supposed to do now? So having that intent going in, and again, there can be flexibility on that intent. You might go in saying 55 grams of carbs, and there may be a really big piece of cake or pie or something that you want, and you can deviate from the plan. But that's where step 2 comes in, where you've got to consider how you are dosing for these things, because any of the foods and any of the snacks that you're going to be getting at an event like this are likely going to contain lots of simple sugar. And that's fine. But what you have to remember is simple sugar is going to hit your blood sugar like that. Literally, you're going to eat it, boom, you're going to start seeing the effects pretty quickly. Because think about it, a lot of these things can be substitutes for low snacks, or they can be low snacks. Think about candy corn. I use candy corn year round as my low snack. I'm nuts and I eat it because I think it's disgusting, so I won't overdo it. But the reason I'm saying this is candy corn is a Halloween staple. I'm still convinced the candy corn that exists right now was made in the original candy corn batch like 110 years ago because nobody actually likes it. But that is besides the point here. The more important thing is these are things that are going to spike your blood sugar quick. So if you are not on time with your dosing, or even more than on time, the whole quote of if you're on time, you're late. And, if you're 15 minutes earlier on time, I'm talking if you are not on your game, you might be doing your dose 30 minutes out. You might be doing your dose 20 minutes out, whatever it is. If you are not on time and on point with the timing of your dose, you are going to expect a high blood sugar. Like, it's just going to be something you've resigned yourself to, whether you want to or whether you don't, because because look, candy corn, I use it for low because of how fast it'll spike. I can eat 7 pieces of candy corn and know that my 60 blood sugar is going to be 97 in about 12 minutes. And I'm being slightly exaggerating on the numbers, but I'm really not. Like, it's going to be fast. So now imagine you have a bunch of options for chocolate, a bunch of options for fast acting carbs, which chocolate's still going to be fast acting with the added sugar. You've got some cookies, you've got some potential cake. That's all going to hit you really fast. So if you don't go in with a plan and then you don't dose on time, you are asking to go to a 280, 290, 350 blood sugar. So you have to pay attention to that. And I can not emphasize that enough. Absolutely cannot. And don't get me wrong, there's times where I go to an event, I'm like, I gotta graze. This looks so good. I gotta have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Grab that plate, assess what you've got, and have your dose, and then kill some time. Talk to some people, comment on people, on the game that happened yesterday, or I guess because in this case Halloween's a Monday, so you've got a whole slate of NFL games you can talk about, or people's costumes, discuss that, or the inside jokes, whatever it needs to be, right? Give yourself a little bit of time prior to eating, or show up and be like, hey, I know I'm having at least 20 grams, boom, there I go. Here's 20 grams, so something's going in my system prior to everything else. Obviously, you've got to be careful if you're walking around and you're trick-or-treating, because trick-or-treating is technically a form of slow cardio, right? A very slow, sustained, steady cardio. Ding dong, hey, what's up? Trick-or-treat. Thanks for the candy. Next house, next house, next house. And you might be gone for an hour and a half. That's the equivalent of walking around Disney World if you really think about it. Probably even more active, because Disney World, you're going to be sitting in line or standing in line or whatever, right? You're likely to be standing around for a component, whereas here, your standing around episodes are very small. You could say this is a very, very, very slow, pace interval training. But regardless of how you want to consider it, it's a sustained level of cardio. It's like going to the grocery store. So going into trick-or-treating, if you're not paying attention to your basal, you're not paying attention to what your blood sugar is, you could end up with a low. Now, don't get me wrong. It's probably the best situation to be in. Oh, I went low during trick-or-treating. Oh no, where will I get my snacks from? But you understand the point, right? The goal is to not have to worry about that low and instead just be on point with adjusting the insulin, adjusting your dosing when you have the food itself. Keep that part in mind for sure. And then, of course, the typical, the fat and the protein, except there's not really protein in candy. So there's going to be fat in a bunch of these chocolate-based snacks, sweets, whatever you want to call them. There's going to be fat. There's cookies, there's going to be fat. There's cake, there's going to be fat. And remember, that stuff's going to add up over time. So you have to consider the effects hours later from this candy. And I'm not over here trying to tell you, oh my goodness, trick-or-treating's terrible. Think of all the things you have to figure out. Just don't even bother doing it. No, enjoy yourself. Enjoy life. Enjoy Halloween. It's a great holiday. If you're, college age or grad school age, there may be social gatherings and parties and other fun stuff too. But the key is, what I'm trying to really emphasize here, is just being responsible, right? Going in with your plan, knowing, hey, I'm about to be walking for the next hour and a half. What do I need to do to make sure I don't go low so I can continue to enjoy it? Okay, hey, I just walked, but now I'm about to eat. What's my game plan going into this eating time? Am I dosing on time? These are little things that might seem obvious now that I say them, but they're things where in the moment, usually we're so focused on what we're doing, hopefully, but you're so focused on what you're doing and what the costume looks like and what your friend's saying and this and that and the other thing that we forget. And that's how we end up in these social situations where our blood sugars are all over the map, which I don't know about you, but for me, if my blood sugar is 267 and I'm trying to have a great time with my buddies, I'm not going to have the full 10 out of 10 experience of me because I'm feeling like garbage this whole time. I may be giving the 6 out of 10 experience or the 4 out of 10 experience versus the 10 out of 10, I'm 122, I'm loving life, things are amazing experience. And theoretically, if you're not able to give that 10 out of 10 because your number is higher, you are technically cheating the people that you are with out of the full 100% experience of you. Whether that's your kids, whether that's your friends, whether that's your family, whoever it might be, you are not giving them the full 100% experience of you if you are allowing your blood sugars to go ham and jump all over the place, which is why I'm just asking you, hey, what is that plan? What is your intent going in? How are you going to make sure that you are having your numbers on point? Because if you don't have a plan, you're destined to fail. What is it? Those who plan to fail the plan. There you go. Motivational quote of the day. But the more important thing is, in all reality, that's all it has to be, is just figure out, what is that plan? How am I going taking a dose. If you're trick-or-treating, you've got extra cardio built in. So that's going to help your insulin sensitivity in and of itself. But that's something I would say on that end. Now, the other thing to say, and this goes for the people that they have well-meaning friends or family members, and this is going to go for the holidays too. This is the sugar-free conundrum. I'm actually impressed I haven't talked about sugar-free stuff up to this point, but I feel like Halloween's a great time to talk about it because some well-meaning person, maybe it's a classmate, maybe it's a work buddy, is that a thing? Maybe it's a coworker, there we go, English. Maybe it is just your neighbor and they know you have diabetes and, Sheila comes over and says, hey, I baked you this really nice looking pie and I didn't use any sugar. In fact, I used this other stuff called erythritol. Or somebody comes over and says, hey, I went to your class. Hey, I know that you have diabetes, so you can't necessarily have all the stuff that everybody else has. So you know what I'm going to give you instead? I've got this Russell Stover's sugar-free caramel little circle things that look really good and they're delicious. They taste just like the regular thing. And this person, of course, has not actually tried them to confirm this. And maybe somebody else is well-meaning and you go to someone's house for a Halloween gathering and the parents say, you know what? I know everybody else has a bunch of the gummy candy and I got you something special, and they give you the infamous Haribo sugar-free gummy bears. And the intent on the surface is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It is, hey, we're here. We're happy to help. We're excited to be able to include you in this activity. But my biggest request for you this is to please, for the love of God and for the love of yourself, out of self-love, please just say, thanks so much, accept it, smile, and don't eat it. Do not eat it. Please do not eat it. And oh man, it would be a big mistake to eat it. If somebody's like, hey, I made you this pie or whatever, sugar-free pie, if they use a bunch of erythritol or they use a little bit of maltitol or a little bit of sorbitol, like a teeny little bit, not a huge deal. For cooking purposes and baking, I would just use RX sugar, which is allulose, but it's phenomenal allulose. That stuff bakes well and it doesn't do what I'm about to tell you these other things do to you. It actually improves your gut health, so you get a double whammy. But this other candies, let's say someone gives you the Russell Stover's candy or somebody gives you some sort of sugar-free Hershey bar because they mean well. These sugar alcohols, what they do is, of course, they change the sugar molecule to make sure that they don't impact you as much as a traditional, regular Hershey bar would or regular caramel bar or whatever. But what the problem is sugar alcohols, while they're not absorbed completely by the body, which is why your body doesn't process the 12 grams of sugar alcohol the way it would process 12 grams of sugar, the sugar alcohols are going to go through you. And by through you, they go in your mouth, they go through your digestive system, and I'll let you fill in the blank with your imagination. But why that's important is if you eat a little bit of this, you eat one, hey, I'm having one of these little Russell Stover things, you'll be fine. You won't notice a difference. If you say, hey, I've got a bunch of these sugar-free things, that is the problem. That becomes a very large problem. Those gummy bears, those Haribo sugar-free gummy bears, if you are having a bad day or you want to get a laugh in, you change your mood, change your mindset, go look at the reviews on Amazon for those and come back and tell me what you find, because they are hilarious, because people's depictions of these are just incredible. They're legitimately one of the funniest things. I'm going to try to find one. Let's see. This person wrote like a 7-paragraph thing, but this is the just type of description. I hadn't eaten since lunch and I was feeling a bit hungry, my stomach rumbling loudly in protest, which caused me to look around at the other travelers rushing past me in the busy terminal, mortified my bodily noises might be heard by others. And needless to say, this person, checked their watch again, frowned, absentmindedly opened the bag of the Haribo sugar-free gummy bears and began to munch on them as the lines slowly advanced. To be fair, they tasted fine, just like every other manufacturer's brand of the colorful candy, and they were sugar-free to boot. This is what made the situation so baffling. If they had tasted off or different, I wouldn't have likely continued to shovel them in my mouth absent-mindedly while daydreaming about what I would order to eat from my hotel. Needless to say, it became increasingly more evident to me that this wasn't just a stomach ache. No, this was something much, much worse. A sudden shock of pain racked my body, and I wondered if I was going to give birth to a Tasmanian devil. The crazy fever-induced image of said cartoon animal chasing Bugs Bunny through the splashy volcanic kettle that was my stomach caused me to laugh as I approached, the TSA, and effectively It was terrible. This guy wrote like a legitimate short story, but he ended up missing his flight because his bowels erupted. Needless to say, I bring this to you as something, as a cautionary tale, but again, as something it's cautionary because you don't want to have these sugar-free things in large quantities. That guy missed his flight because of eating some of these sugar-free gummy bears. So while that's slightly dramatic, it's probably not actually dramatic. These things will wreak havoc on your digestive system. You will not feel good. The gas and distress is not going to be worth the juice is not worth the squeeze. And at that point, just eat the regular stuff. Just say, hey, I'm gonna figure out how to dose for it. I'm gonna commit to dosing for it and avoid the sugar-free stuff. You can donate it. I'm sure somewhere else would rather prefer it, but just eat the real stuff at that point. If someone bakes with it, have a little bit. A lot of times people make a no sugar added pie or something like that. They just don't add any sugar to it. It's just using the natural stuff. If you use allulose, I would definitely say that would be a great option. We made a sugar-free, I don't say sugar-free. We made an allulose-based blueberry pie for Thanksgiving a couple years ago. You could not taste the difference. It was phenomenal. No one could tell the difference. I was like, oh, this pie's amazing. Lo and behold, we used allulose. No one could tell. But the moral of the story here is don't eat the sugar-free candy. Just avoid it. Just say no thanks, or say, oh, thanks so much, and then discard it later on when they can't see it, or donate it somewhere to somebody else. I really even wouldn't do that. That's doing them a disservice, but you understand the point. So that would be my Halloween guide for you. Avoid the sugar-free stuff. Have your intent going into whatever gathering you've got. Make sure you're dosing on time. See, that way you know what you're doing. You know what's going to happen. You know what you're committing to from a dose perspective. Let the insulin do its thing. Pay attention to the trick-or-treating cardio aspect of things and the fact that you may be walking around, you may be a little bit active, and enjoy yourself. It's a holiday that's meant to be enjoyed. It's a time that's meant to be fun, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your friends, whatever you're doing, it's meant to be enjoyable. So have fun with it. Enjoy the sweets. Indulge a little bit. Just be responsible. Be smart about it. And that's pretty much it. It's really nothing crazy. And that's the thing is with our patients, and they know this through our practice, our goal is to say, hey, how can we participate in fill in the blank activity without feeling any different than anybody else? You saw how I experienced things when I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old versus how I would view it now. It's completely different. But the big thing to think about here is, throw the antiquated beliefs out, ignore the sugar-free stuff, have the real stuff, just be smart. That's all it's gonna take, just being smart about it. So let me know, did these tips help you for your upcoming Halloween? Did they help you on Halloween? Let me know what other topics you want to hear about. Just tag me on social media at manofzeel, MANOFTZEEL, for what's been going on, what questions you've got. Definitely drop a comment, in this video. Let me know what you want to hear about next. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple if you are getting some positive awesomeness out of this podcast experience. Definitely love all of that feedback as well and your good vibes. And with that, I'll catch you soon.